Hello, welcome back to the latest our Sunderland briefing with myself, Tom Shaw, and Scott Wilson in association with our partners, the Fans Museum, Cospex Opticians. Thanks to those. Thanks to you for watching and listening, and do subscribe if you haven't already to the YouTube channel. We're recording this on Tuesday, late Tuesday morning, so obviously looking back on the 1-1 draw with Everton last night. We will have a very, very brief look back at the Chelsea win as well. I know it feels like an eternity ago now, but we didn't do a vid or a pod last week, and it feels like that was too impressive just to completely gloss over completely. And we'll talk about
that's my fault, really. It was kids half term, so I was at Chester Zoo and looking around Liverpool and all of this. So I do apologise, but I was back on it last night.
The Great Northwest Tour, and you came up with Everton.
Yes.
And for half an hour last night, Scott, we'll talk, by the way, briefly about Kyril Louis-Dreyfus' interview as well, because obviously he spoke to Sky before the game last night. And then afterwards, for half an hour, it kind of threatened to be the most humbling, sobering game of the season so far. Everton should have doubled the lead. I mean, that's a sitter that Barry misses at the back post after Ndai's brilliant opener. And then in the second half, obviously, Sunderland fight back and get more points from a losing position. I think they're top of the table, the Premier League table this season, for the points of gain from a losing position. What did you make of it all? First of all, what's your verdict on the game as a whole?
Yeah, so, I mean, the first half hour was the first time, really, I thought this season that you looked at it and thought, Sunderland are miles off here. Miles off. And it was everything, really. It was, I just thought they got knocked out of their stride by Everton. Everton came flying out the traps. We're on the front foot from the off. We're in Sunderland's faces. And I just thought for the first time, for half an hour, Sunderland just couldn't get a grip of it. Passes were going astray. Players just didn't have any time on the ball. There was no composure. We obviously had the change of shape again with Hume kind of drifting into midfield when Sunderland had the ball, which worked at times, but again seemed to be leaving gaps at times. Everton obviously opened the scoring, and brilliant solo goal. Is there a foul on Siddiqui on the touchline? Probably, but I think it's borderline. I think once the referee doesn't give it, I'm not sure that should get overturned. Sunderland then have to be better. I mean, and Ndai's run past 3 or 4 of them. Brilliant goal. And then, yeah, for 10, 15 minutes, it's all Everton. And had a second goal gone in, I think that might have been that. For all Sunderland have shown great spirit and resilience. We'll get to that in a minute. I think if they go 2-0 down with Everton on top like the way it's over, Grealish obviously hits the post. Barry's is an absolute sitter. I mean, the more you see it, the worse that gets. So that is a massive let-off. So Sunderland have had a let-off. There's no doubt about that. But then, from about half hour onwards, the game just turned. Partly, I think it was, there was a 10-minute spell where the referee just couldn't seem to get anything right. Siddiqui obviously loses his head, goes flying into a challenge, gets booked, rightly so. Hume crunches into another challenge, but that then gets the crowd going. It gets Sunderland going. It puts a bit of a seed of doubt in Everton's mind, I think. And then the last 10 minutes or so of the first half, the game's changed. It's Sunderland on the front foot. And so you're going into halftime thinking, do you know what? Sunderland are really lucky they're only one down here. But actually, if they can get a goal, they're right. They'll be the team on top. And that's exactly what happened. Couldn't have been a better start the second half. Xhaka obviously scores 1-1. And then I thought Sunderland played really well in the second half. The one thing they didn't do was create an awful lot of chances. Pickford's made a couple of goods. One really good save, I thought, which was the Lafay deflected shot where he's kind of going the wrong way. He claws it away. But it wasn't like Sunderland created a whole host of chances. And yeah, I felt like for all of the second half, it felt like a goal was there for them. It felt like they were a threat. Mukiele's long throws again causing absolute havoc. And then probably about the last 10 minutes, Everton had ridden the storm then. And actually, in stoppage time was a complete non-event, really. Sunderland, 6 minutes, I think it was, but Sunderland couldn't really get the ball upfield to create anything. So it wasn't like a real last-gasp stand. But I think taken as a whole, you've got to be happy with the point, because for half an hour, Sunderland could have been, dead and buried. No doubt about that. So, and to be fair, we saw a little bit of it in the Chelsea game. It's easy to forget now, but for the first, I would say, 15 minutes of that Chelsea game, you wondered if Sunderland were going to go under, rather. Garnacho gets the early goal. Sunderland's formation's a bit all over the place, and you did wonder, can they get themselves back into this? Well, that's twice now, having gone behind early. Not only have they got themselves into it, but they've won one of the games and they've come very close to winning the other one. They've got themselves into a position where not only have they steadied the ship, but they've actually quite quickly become the better team in the game. And that's a massive, massive pat on the back for Sunderland. That, when we talk about spirit, resilience, togetherness, the ability to think for themselves on the pitch as well, which I think goes under the radar a little bit. But an awful lot of positives from the last two games, not just the fact that they've taken 4 points from games where at various stages in those matches you've thought, well, Sunderland can't get anything out of this.
And for all when you look back and think the obvious two standout moments of the season so far of, well, the West Ham win on the opening day, but then I think the Forest and the Chelsea wins both felt like statement wins, didn't they? The draw last night and the draw against Villa as well, I think was important just because it helps to build belief within the dressing room that they'll go back confident that if something goes against them on the pitch, they can react to it, they can recover from it, and they can fight back from it. And last season, really, it was that spirit and resilience and character that got Sunderland up, wasn't it? Obviously, they are absolutely armed with bags of quality and talent last season, but it was that till the end. It was that
till the end, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Sunderland up, but this is a new team. This is a completely new team. So I think it's credit to Le Bris, credit to the players, obviously, to Le Bris for the way he's managed to mould them all together so quickly, but also to the recruitment team, because how often do we hear recruitment, those who work in recruitment talking about how it's just as important to sign the right characters as well as the right players? But yeah, we know that, but doing it is not always easy, especially when you're preparing for the Premier League with less notice than anyone else, having won a playoff game. You may be having to act on the spot a little bit, but the players who they've brought in clearly have the character to go with the quality, don't they?
Yeah, and Le Bris talked about this at his pre-match presser, didn't he? We did a piece on this on the Northern Echo website at the back end of the last week or over the weekend. And like you say, every manager, every head of recruitment will see it. But it's an easy thing to say, isn't it? We want to sign players with the right character. We need people who are going to buy into it. Well, time and time again, we see at clubs where that doesn't happen. And let's be honest, there was a risk of it not happening this summer. Sunderland could quite easily have gone out and signed a load of journeyman mercenaries this summer on big money contracts with big reputations, probably far bigger names than the players they actually signed, but who were coming here simply for one big last payday, going through the motions. They have absolutely not done that. Every player that they have signed has, seemingly bought into everything that Le Bris is about, everything that he wants his team to be, all the attitude that he wants in training, what he wants in matches. He's getting that in abundance from them. And that's, that ultimately, that's why they've been able to come back in the way that they have. And I agree with you. It's that belief now that no matter what situation they're in a game, they can get themselves back into it. And I also think the two results you referenced there, the Villa draw and the Everton draw, important because they're still unbeaten at home. We're in November and they're still unbeaten at home. And that I think is important. David Moyes referenced it after the game. He said, look, we're going away from here a bit disappointed we haven't taken something given the first half hour. But he said, make no mistake, this is not an easy place to come to. Any team who goes away from here with something this season will have done all right. Well, if opposition managers are saying that about the Stadium of Light and about what to expect when you play this Sunderland team at the Stadium of Light, then I think that's a massive bonus for Sunderland going through the rest of the season, isn't it? That you've already got opposition teams thinking Sunderland away, well, that's going to be a challenge. We're going to be tested there. They'll be right in our faces. They'll be right up at us. Teams know what they're going to get now at the Stadium of Light.
We'll get to it before we finish, obviously, but Saturday night's going to be good, isn't it? Saturday night's going to be good.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a big game for Granit Xhaka, who I feel like we have to talk again, but I don't even really know what to ask you about him or what to say that we haven't said already. I just feel like we need to probably repeat the fact that he is exceeding even the highest of expectations.
Well, There is a debate to be had here, isn't there, about at the minute, is he the best central midfielder in the Premier League? I don't think that is a ridiculous debate to be having. Now, I on the YouTube short that I did after the game last night, I kind of headlined it that, and straight away, fans from other clubs jumping on, pure clickbait, absolute nonsense. Of course, he's not. Blah blah blah. Well, tell me a central midfielder who's been better over the first 10 games of the season. Declan Rice, maybe, but he's playing in the best team in the league. Like, you know, I'm not sure. I certainly don't think there's been a more influential midfielder for a team in the Premier League this season. I think that's a given everything that Xhaka's been for this Sunderland team. But in terms of just performance level, I'm not sure there's anyone playing better as a central midfielder in the last 3 months. I really don't.
Well, I mean, it's what is it? The 4th of November, and he might well have the Player of the Season trophy.
Premier League.
Yeah.
Maybe
I think the important thing, twice in the last week, Le Bris has almost described him as like having a second head coach on the pitch. And it was interesting last week. I was at the academy on Thursday, Friday, whenever it was, Friday before for the pre-match presser. And it was interesting. He'd said before the Chelsea game, and he said how it was just a throwaway comment, but he said Granit made the players believe. He made the players believe they could go to Chelsea and win. I don't think you can put a price on that.
No. A little spoiler, a little teaser, I should say. So Wednesday morning on the Northern Echo website, there'll be an interview going up with Bertrand Traore. There's some interesting stuff in there, actually, about lots of different stuff. But one of the things he talks about is Xhaka. And I think it's just obvious that the Sunderland players, I'm not saying are in awe of Xhaka. That's not the right word. But
I think they are. I think that's fair.
They know they're in the presence of somebody who is a very special player, but also has been there, done it, and when he speaks, you listen.
Yeah.
I think that, you know what, and that's Traore, by the way, who's 30 and has played for Ajax, he's played for Lyon, he's played for Chelsea, he's played for Villa. He's not a 17-year-old kid who's going to be awestruck by being in the same dressing room as Granit Xhaka. He's played with some of Europe's best footballers, and yet he's basically saying, Granit's our leader. When he speaks, we listen. And I think that's, you know, for someone who's only been in a football club for 3 months, that's pretty incredible, isn't it, really? And you know, there were very high hopes when he came, weren't there, about what it might mean. Well, no matter the absolute highest of those hopes, I think he's exceeded them. He's been everything Sunderland could have wanted from him and so much more.
I'm just looking for it now, but I can't find it off the top of my head. There was the stats you'll have seen that did the rounds last week about distance covered and how Xhaka had covered the most distance. I think that's the other thing. I probably fell into the trap of thinking when he came, like, Xhaka's quality is absolutely not in question, but has he still got the legs? Like, is he going to?
Which was the debate with Jordan Henderson, wasn't it? When he's named, and to be fair, Henderson's doing a really good job at Brentford. So you know, it's not like Sunderland dodged a bullet there in any way, shape, or form. But those reservations were still there. You're right. When Xhaka came in, it was, well, we know why Sunderland have signed him. We know what he's going to offer for a young team going into Premier League, but actually, will it become obvious in the biggest games in particular that his legs are gone and he can't really do it anymore? Well, absolutely no chance. No chance at all.
And Kyril Louis-Dreyfus spoke to Sky before the game on Monday night. So just a few bits to come out of it, really. I mean, first of all, January and this top 10 finish suggestion. Which it's the first time we've heard that, because obviously we've both tried. If you tried again last night with Le Bris, if you try anything like that with Le Bris, you absolutely get nothing, do you? But
I've got to admit, I've only seen the words of it because obviously it was on while I was busy working pre-game and stuff. Was he asked about top 10 or did he just come out and say?
No, so it was within the January chunk.
Yeah.
When he was talking about basically planning ahead for the January window, and said, Obviously, if we'd been in the bottom 3 by Christmas or we're in the top 6 at Christmas, that changes the ambition a little bit. We're currently preparing for all scenarios, but we've been doing that since the summer. Hopefully, we'll be going into January window with a top 10 finish in mind, and we'll prepare and execute the transfer window to give us the best chance. So he doesn't say, we want to finish top 10 this season, and anything other than that is a failure. That is clearly absolutely not the case. But I think what it does is just gives us a window into the thinking at the club, doesn't it? Which we kind of know, but it's different when someone, the chairman, come out.
And what you're right. What makes it interesting is that Le Bris is just not going to go there. He will not go. I suspect Sunderland could be 5th with a game of the season to play, and he will still not admit that finishing in the top 10 is an ambition.
Well, it was the old Ranieri when he was in charge at Leicester, wasn't it? And he wouldn't bite on that.
He's just he does not want to go there, and I understand it. I understand why. He's not that type of character anyway. But he will see that there's absolutely nothing to gain from shifting the ambitions at the minute and completely changing what he's telling the players. Week in, week out, don't get carried away. Next game, every game's tough in this league, all that kind of. He's got to be drilling that into the players. So to then sit in front of us and say, "Oh yeah, we'll finish top 10," I understand why he doesn't want to go there. The fact that Kyril has, you're right, it's a window into what the club are thinking, A, in terms of January, but probably B, more in terms of the short to medium term. Clearly, at the start of the season, the only ambition was stay up. Then that gives you a chance to go again and rebuild and use this network of scouting and all of that to bring in more quality players, etc., etc. Well, what it feels like is that all of that process has just been nudged forward a little bit. And that's not to say that it's, we're going to be in Europe next season, we're going to spend X amount. But what it makes you think is, targets for January, for next summer. Well, listen, Sunderland could still get relegated this season. They're not, home and hose by any stretch of the imagination. But I suspect internally, the worst case scenario, while they've still got to have it tucked away under a book, if you like, in case it happens, at the minute, I don't think they'll be paying very much attention to that or spending very much time on working through what the worst case scenario would have looked like, because it really doesn't look like the worst case scenario is going to happen. So what that allows you to do is, okay, well, what's the best case scenario? What's the next best case scenario? Let's start actively planning for that. And that's helpful, isn't it? Because what it means is you can do things in January that maybe you were a bit more hesitant to. You can start to really firm up plans for the summer when, if you're 19th in March, well, you can't firm up those plans for the summer because you clearly don't know what league you're going to be in. So I think that's interesting.
And also the fact that they will be doing stuff in January, because we shouldn't be surprised at that, because look what they did in the summer on the back of winning promotion. But equally, after such an overhaul in the summer, and with such depth really in certain areas of the pitch, maybe not in others, but in certain areas, you would understand. You would completely understand if they said, well, actually, no, we did our work in the summer. We're happy with the squad that's got us to wherever we are at the midpoint of the season. We're going to move on. But that line at the end there, we'll be going into January window with the top 10 in mind, and we will prepare and execute the transfer window to give us the best chance. Really, from someone in Kyril's position, you can't be much stronger than that, can you? On the fact that we will again look to strengthen the squad.
Anyone who's muted Fabrizio Romano alerts just about Christmas time, flick them onto one, because that's where we'll be finding out what's happening. Don't you worry about that.
And just a couple of other snippets from it. The approach going into the summer was interesting. I thought we got promoted into a new league, and our starting 11 is almost entirely of new players, so we didn't really know what to expect coming into the season. But to be honest, we've been very pleased with the start, especially with the team. And of the window, we didn't really set ourselves a budget in terms of the money we went to spend. We had an ambition to try and bring in the players we want. Unfortunately, we were able to conclude a lot of the deals we wanted to do. As a result of that, the spend in the end was big, but most importantly, we got the players that we wanted. It's quite rare, really, for a club, especially in Sunderland's position, to go into a transfer window after winning promotion with such an open mind, I think.
Yeah. I think what it also highlights, and to be fair, Christian Speakman's always said this, is the extent to which the work that had gone on previously had left them so much wriggle room in terms of PSR and what they could do. You know, you're already seeing fans of other clubs moaning on, well, how was Sunderland able to spend £150 million this? Well, the reason they were able to do it is because they'd barely spent any money in the Championship and they'd sold Jack Clark, Joe Bellingham, Tommy Watson, etc., etc. So, it's not fluke that they've been able to have this window. They've been able to have this window because they've run the club in a certain way up to the point of getting to the Premier League. Now, clearly that level of spend will have an impact moving forward if Sunderland are not trading players and bringing money in and growing revenue and all that kind of stuff that we know now in a PSR world you have to do to be able to carry on spending. But everything that Sunderland have done in the way that they've run the club and run recruitment so far suggests that they're absolutely all over that. And, this will still be a player trading model, but it'll be a player trading model where you're potentially selling players to enable you to bring ones in for 40, 50 million, as opposed to selling players to allow you to bring ones in for 4 or 5 million.
And just a couple of final bits on it. He talked about the experience in the squad for all, obviously, and he had talked about the kind of model of bringing in young players with the best years ahead of him, but then also talked about the experienced players and said people talk a lot about Granit Xhaka, but I think all of the other experienced players around, Ronaldo and even the ones from the year before, have played a vital role. Well, you made this point a couple of weeks ago, how players like Mukiele and Alderete, I know he didn't play last night, but clearly Xhaka is the headline act, and Ronaldo, bags of experience. But then I think having Mukiele, Alderete, the experience they've already got under the belt as well, it's a nice balance between them and then the likes of Siddiqui, Diarra, Talbi and the others. Yeah. And Traore, as you mentioned, they're bags of experience.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Siddiqui's done absolutely brilliantly. Diarra would have been a regular starter still had he stayed fit, I'm pretty sure. But actually, and obviously Roofs has come in and been an absolute revelation. But actually, like you say, Mukiele, Alderete, Ronaldo, increasingly Traore, 4 regular starters there who actually don't really fit the model, if you like. They're in a couple of cases in their 30s, in the others they're in their mid to late 20s. They're not your development players that maybe a Talbi still is. But they've been absolutely crucial in ensuring Sunderland have been able to hit the ground running. No doubt about that.
And finally, talked about Le Bris and said he's never come across anyone who goes into as much detail with everything he does. And I think it's just a reminder, and we have kind of touched on this on most vids and pods, but we could probably just and should do something just on him at some point. Yeah. I think for all of the players we've talked about there have been praised through the early weeks of the season, and clearly the recruitment team and everyone at that end who brought the players in. I think what we've seen in the first few months of the season is that Regis Le Bris is absolutely elite, isn't he? When it comes to managers, head coaches, he's absolutely elite.
And what it says is, you're right, Xhaka, brilliant. Bellingham, when they brought Bellingham into the club, the profit that they were able to sell. The one decision above all else that Christian Speakman, Kyril, all right, Gazolfi wasn't there when that decision was made, but clearly has been now. Or the one decision that all of that kind of managerial unit, if you like, has got right more than anything else was the decision to appoint Regis Le Bris. What about if Will still had said yes?
I was just about to say in the week that.
Yeah. What about if Will still had said, who knows? Who knows? Maybe there is an elite head coach in there as well. And had he come to Sunderland, it would have worked. But of all the sliding doors moments that you get, and fans quite rightly say, still probably the biggest sliding door moment is that Tommy Watson shot, isn't it? We all know what's happened to Sheffield United since. We know where Sunderland have gone on to. I think equally as big a sliding door moment is Will still saying no to Sunderland and then them turning to Regis Le Bris. Because, like you say, everything he touches seems to turn to gold. He's tactically brilliant, clearly a really, really good manager, sharp as attack, willing to be probably more flexible than we maybe even thought he was last year in the Championship. There was a level of flex, but the formation that Sunderland have played in the last 2 games, don't think anyone would have seen coming even a couple of weeks ago. Never mind.
Well, Enzo Maresca.
Yeah, he certainly didn't see it coming. Yeah. So just everything about him, like you say, screams absolute top level head coach. At some point, we're probably going to have to be having the conversation about how long Sunderland can hold on to him, because I think we're at that. I think we're getting to that level where I'm not necessarily saying one of the absolute big boys. I'm not sure that if Liverpool, for whatever reason, decided Arne Slot wasn't the man tomorrow, they'd turn to Regis Le Bris. But I could well imagine teams in the top half of the Premier League, Bournemouth, Brentford. Actually, I don't know if Brentford are in the top half. They're probably not, but they're there or thereabouts. Any of Everton, if Moyes was to, any of those kind of clubs would absolutely snap your hands off to have Regis Le Bris. Absolutely.
Well, we'll save that conversation for another day. Hopefully long down the road.
He might be replacing Mikel Arteta after they've beaten Arsenal at the weekend.
and here's something we didn't think we'd be saying at this stage of the season. But if Sunderland win on Saturday, they move to within 4 points of top of the table Arsenal. I think a home game against Arsenal, it's going to be, there's going to be a real sense of occasion. Atmosphere is going to be class anyway. But Saturday tea time, like on TV, it just feels, doesn't it? It just feels like it's all set up for an absolute belter of a night.
It does. And it's a great time of the season to be getting this chance to kind of look at Sunderland and think, right, okay, how do you fare against the best? Because I think Arsenal are going to win the league. At the moment, they look like they're going to win the league. They're certainly, at the minute, the best team in the country. They're pretty much impossible to score against. They control games for long, long periods. If there is a doubt, if Gyökeres is injured, maybe it's up front and still. But it's undoubted. Yes, winning at Chelsea was fantastic. This is the biggest test of the season. There's no doubt about that. Are Sunderland going to be able to lay a glove on them? I think is the interesting thing. And I don't mean that in a patronising manner. I just mean that Arsenal, against the best teams in the country, the best teams in Europe, can just control the game to such an extent that you can't even get a shot. I don't think Sunderland are a better team than Burnley, I think. But Burnley did not have a single shot on target against them last weekend. And that wasn't because they went out to be massively negative. It's just that they couldn't get the ball. And when they did get the ball, they couldn't get anywhere near the 18-yard box. So are Sunderland going to be able to go toe-to-toe with Arsenal and cause them problems? Never mind win the game, cause them problems. Because that would make for a fantastic afternoon of entertainment, wouldn't it? Clearly the worry is I don't think Sunderland will get hammered on Saturday. To be honest, I don't really think Arsenal do that to anyone. Can I see a scenario where Arsenal win 2-0 without really having to get out of third gear? Well, yes, because Arsenal can do that against any team in the league. That would be a bit disappointing, wouldn't it? But let's hope it's not that. Let's hope that Sunderland do find a way to, at least ask this Arsenal defence questions that they haven't really been asked at any other stage so far this season. That's a really big ask. It's a big ask because, like I say, Arsenal have played most of the big boys, haven't they? And they haven't been able to get anywhere near trouble in this back line. So can Sunderland do it? Let's see.
Big game for Xhaka, isn't it? For all we talked about there. I mean, imagine how he's feeling about this.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Because he obviously had his run-ins with the Arsenal fans, didn't he?
It feels like a completely different Xhaka now. Because for all we were talking there now about like this maturity, I mean, it felt like watching from afar. Every couple of weeks there was not a scandal. That's overdoing it. That suggests he was on the front of the news of the world every week, which he absolutely wasn't. But you know what I mean? Like it
was a walking red card. It was a walking red card, and it got to the point, didn't it, where Arsenal weren't winning things. They were throwing chances away, and I think Xhaka became the kind of emblem of he's not good enough. We need to get him out. How many times we're going to keep giving Granit Xhaka another go? We need better. Get rid of him. But then, to be fair to him, in his last kind of year at Arsenal, he turned that round, didn't he? And he became almost a bit of a fan's favourite again. So I'm pretty sure he'll get a good reception from the Arsenal fans. I don't think it'll be as good as the reception that the Sunderland fans gave Pickford last night, which was fantastic. I mean, the scenes after the game when Sunderland fans were singing "He's one of our own" and Pickford's going around the pitch, that was brilliant. I thought that was absolutely class. I'm not sure at that level with the Arsenal fans and Xhaka, but I'm sure he'll get a good reception. I mean, you know, he put in a hell of a lot of service for that football club.
Just finally then, for what you were saying about him potentially being certainly in the conversation for the best midfield in the league, does he get in Arsenal's team?
I'm gonna sit on the fence here a bit by saying I haven't really seen enough of that Zubimendi. To me, it feels like, yes, I would be playing, but I would be playing Xhaka, and I think him and Rice could complement each other perfectly. So I would say yes, but I would accept that I haven't really seen a lot of Zubimendi to know what level he's playing at this season. Let's just say yes. He'd get it out of the team. No bother. He's the best midfielder in the Premier League.
We just chop out the deliberations then.
Yeah, he's the best midfielder in the Premier League. He'd walk in.
And then we can headline it on Scott Wilson's emphatic response.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah. Well, let's hope there's another emphatic display from Sunderland on Saturday night. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Keep your eyes peeled on the Northern Echo, and we are Sunderland for obviously all the build up to the game on Saturday, and then all analysis and reaction afterwards. And we'll be back next week. Take care.